This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Stories influence, teach, and inspire us. But what about the storytellers who create them? Uncorking a Story profiles storytellers to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. It all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin? Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Now here's your host, Mike Carlin.
Hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I'm pleased to introduce you to Steve Borys. Do you ever wonder why bad things always seem to happen to good people? Do you want to know how to overcome adversity and become successful despite terrible odds? Would you like to know what a parkway on Long Island has to do with two evil dictators? Well, today's guest, Steve Borys, has been struggling with these questions all his life. And here today to talk about that and his book is Steve Borys. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Steve.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Well, I'm happy to have you here, Steve. Steve, I'm curious, where does your story as an author begin?
Sure. It kind of, I was thinking about writing a book for quite some time, but, it really came down to the pandemic, where, it was a couple things converged. I had more time. I am a high school teacher, and we were furloughed, and you couldn't, get into work, and you couldn't coach, and there was just a lot of free time, and also I felt the need to try to turn the tide of the way things were going. Things were getting quite chaotic on social media. With all the misinformation and disinformation and just people's stress and anxiety about the pandemic in general, and financial concerns and you name it. And I just saw my own family dealing with a lot of stress and depression and anxiety. And what really also bothered me were people who were friends for decades and who had really loved and helped each other were now tearing each other apart. For reasons that didn't quite make much sense. And I just wanted to find a way to try to bridge that gap, to try to remind everybody, hey, we're all in this together. And the answer to all of our problems is love and community and, bridging those divides. And so that was the goal of the book. That's why I chose to become an author and take this leap and try to make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, before we talk about the book, just tell me a little bit more about your background. So I know you're a high school teacher, you're a coach as well. When you were growing up, did you ever think to yourself, hey, I'm going to write a book someday?
No. In fact, growing up, I could barely write a one paragraph essay, that was, part of the origin story. I was, as a child, I was learning disabled. And reading and writing never came easy to me. And by the time I got to middle school, I was flunking out. And writing a book was probably the furthest thing from my mind. And I'm sure some of my old English teachers would be quite amused or terrified that I actually went ahead and put a couple hundred pages together.
Or proud. Maybe they'd be proud, though. I mean, you never know.
Absolutely. I hope so.
So you're a coach. What do you coach?
I coached everything, but primarily football. I was a head football coach for about 14, 15 years over at Sleepy Hollow, New York. Now I'm the assistant coach at Weston, where I'm coaching my son Peter, and he's going to be a senior. We're having a lot of fun with that. I've coached track, I've coached wrestling, softball, you name it. I've had a chance to coach it.
I'm curious because I do want to talk about the pandemic a little bit, but how did you lean on your experiences as a coach, when you were putting this book together? Because I know like the best coaches I've ever had, weren't just those who were concerned about sort of our physical well-being. I mean, that's obviously important, right? Because athletics are a physical thing, by definition, but they're equally, supportive or concerned with our mental states, and kind of building that mental confidence that's required to perform. So, as you're thinking about, your experiences with the pandemic, I'm just curious how you leaned on your experience as a coach as you were thinking about putting this book together.
Yeah, it's all about coaching, and that's kind of the goal of the book. Coaching is about motivation, and getting people to realize that they're their best person. One of my favorite expressions I always like to tell my teams at the beginning of the year is, it's our goal to replace each and every one of you, either with a better player or with a better version of yourself. And they always get terrified at the first part, and then they, oh, okay, catch on with the second. And that was the goal of the book, is to try to encourage people. Hey, things are bad, but we can get through this together.
Yeah.
And drawing from my experience, my other members of my family, their experience, that when faced with overwhelming odds, I want to give you hope. I want you to know you got a chance, and and a chance is all you need. And that's what coaching's about, and that's kind of also the goal of the book, is to try to motivate people and try to get them to realize, you can overcome whatever your problem may be, and
Yeah.
they can be, epic, and historic, like my grandmother, my babcia, faced in the book. It could be, other things that might be a little bit more sneaky, that you may not realize until it's too late.
Well, let's talk about the title, How to Beat Stalin, Hitler, and the Southern State Parkway. That certainly caught my attention when I first heard it. So walk me through your choice of title.
Yeah, once you get into it, it kind of makes sense. It was a way to, kind of catch people's eye. Why is this going to stand out? Some people suggested, titles like Invincible or something like that. That's just going to become white noise. Where this is something that's going to, make people perk up, and hopefully maybe at least read the back of the book, right? And it came to me, because as I was saying before, our problems can be epic, like having to defeat evil dictators, or it can be trying to overcome the death, like in my case, the death of my father, who passed away in a car accident on the Southern State Parkway. It's not that one is greater than the other. They're challenges. And you can overcome them, or they can cost you your life. It could also be going through a divorce, alcoholism, losing a job, dealing with COVID. All these things can sink you, or you can rise to the challenge and overcome, and choose to have a great life despite your obstacle.
Yeah. Yeah. So how old were you when your father passed away?
I was 5.
Wow. What can you paint a picture of what that did to
Yeah.
you?
Sure. So, we had, originally I was born in the Bronx, and my family decided right after I was born to move out to Long Island, because at that point it was 1974 and the Bronx was on fire. So that was probably a good move. Let's get out of the burning city. And we started to have, like, the nice idyllic life. Quarter-acre house, little picket fence, and 2 kids, and things were great. And then it all changed when he died on the Parkway. And from there, our lives spiraled downwards. My mom was a single mom. She did her very best to try to take care of me and my sister. And but in school, I was getting bullied mercilessly. I was the chubby kid, and people would just, couldn't wait to let me know how fat and horrible I was, and some teachers too. And as I said before, I was flunking out of school, and I was really looking into the abyss by the time I got to middle school. Like, my life's going to be nothing but pain and misery and heartache. And it was that time when my mom and I started having midnight talks. We both had insomnia from the stress and anxiety of our situation. And I'd sit up late at night with her. And she was a great mom. Moms would always encourage you, right? Oh, you're beautiful, you're handsome, you're a genius. But you don't believe your mom because your mom's crazy, right? They're supposed to say these crazy things.
They're not unbiased people.
Yeah, and I said, Mom, you're full of it here, how could I be any of those things? I'm the exact opposite of all the things you're saying I'm going to be. I have no hope. I have no chance. And then she got a little tough. She said, well, you're not the only one there who's ever had trouble. And you're not the only one in this family who's had adversity. And that's when she started to tell me about my father's mother, Babcia Eva, and Babcia is the Ukrainian word for grandmother. And I said, and I never really knew her. She died in the same car accident as my father. And I only really knew her as the nice lady who made apple strudel when she came over. As a fat kid, you identify people by what pastry they bring to the house. And I said, okay, well, what's so great about Babcia Eva? And my mom said, well, she was basically a superhero. I said, get out of here, superhero. What are you talking about? How could you be a super? Was the apple strudel radioactive or something? Give her power. No, it's no smart ass. And she said, when she was a girl growing up in Ukraine, she wasn't worried about being overweight. She was worried about starving to death. I said, well, that woke me up a little bit. And she says, yeah, when she was a girl, she was victim of Stalin's Holodomor, which was the Ukrainian genocide, where Stalin, the evil dictator, in order to break the Ukrainians' will to resist his communist collective farms, took out all the food and let about 4 million people starve to death. And she and her family were victims of this. And they lost, several members of the family. They were all on the verge of collapse. And after about a year of that, Stalin relented. He had broken the Ukrainian and brought the food back in. And then a few years after that, there was the Great Terror, where another purge happened, where hundreds of thousands of people were wiped out by the NKVD, which was like their secret police, and just came in and massacred, untold amount of people. And just when they were recovering from that, Hitler was now master of Europe. And in 1941, he unleashed Operation Barbarossa, which was the invasion of the Soviet Union. And it was the largest land battle in the history of the world. And my Babcia's on the front line. And she's quickly captured. Her entire family's murdered. And for the rest of the war, she's going to be a slave in one of Hitler's work camps. And, just hearing this, I'm just shocked, right? When you think of slavery, you think of the Civil War and all that. You don't think of your grandmother as a slave in Europe. And I was, dumbfounded by the story my mother's telling me, and all the horrific detail. And I said, my goodness, how did she survive? How did she make it? And my mother said, well, her grandma Babcia Eva's superpower was that she understood that no matter what was happening to her, she always controlled her reaction to the situation. And she quickly promised herself that she was going to survive this, that she was going to outlast the dictators, and she did. She outlived both Stalin and Hitler, and that she was going to resurrect the Borys family, that one day in the future, we would have a great life again, and that she would not let our family be erased from the pages of history. And that was how she was going to beat Stalin and Hitler, by living a good life and having family, me, that was going to have a good life. And, my goodness, when I heard this, it was completely awe-inspiring, and motivating. And my Babcia, when she did die, she got, at the end of her life, she had owned her own business. She had owned her own house. She lost her husband in the war. She remarried. She got to meet 4 grandkids. And, even though there was a lot of turmoil and a lot of trauma, she lived a good life
Yeah.
and gave me and my sister a chance to have a good life, and her grandchildren to have a good life. Um, and I realized at that moment, oh my God, I'm kind of on the hook now. That if I roll over and die, that if I just, go live in a van down by the river, or I don't, I'm losing to Stalin and Hitler. So it's almost my duty, to go and make something of myself, and to find a way to be happy. And this kind of terrified me because at this point I was just a complete loser.
How
And
old were you at this time when you were having these midnight talks with your mom?
this was like middle school age,
Okay.
12, 13, just when you're that
Right, so
very wonderful period of life, puberty and all that sort of thing.
middle school is hard when everything is going your way, let alone losing your father at an early age, grieving him, dealing with social pressures from, fellow students, teachers, your peers. You're in a family who's also grieving, your mother and your sister are also, I'm sure, still, grieving your father at this point in time. Not that that ever ends.
Right.
But I mean, it's hard enough when things are going your way with middle school and all the changes you face, and you have a lot of cards stacked against you. So this conversation you had with your mom about your grandmother, I mean, what impact did that have on you?
I said, okay, I got to get off the mat here. I got to get up and I got to find a way to be like her. You know, um, my problems are very real, and they were. But if she could stand up to two evil dictators, you know, maybe I got a chance too. And the only issue I ran, I didn't know how to do anything. And so my mom said, well, it's probably time you started playing some football. And she got me on the football team, not because she thought I was going to be, NFL star or something, but just because I needed those role models. And she knew the coaches and she knew what the program was about. And right away, you could almost see how it started changing my life. Um, the first thing they made us do on the team was run a big warm up lap around the perimeter of the school. I was a fat kid. I was dry heaving halfway through, and it was just catastrophic. And it was like the Baton Death March. How am I going to get across around this lap? And the captain, this kid Jason, came and grabbed me and dragged me, kicking and screaming across the finish line, and told me, "You're not going to quit. We're in this together." And just to have somebody say that, you didn't have to say that. Somebody other than your mom, right? Started to change my life for the better. And the slogan on the team was "Brothers Forever," and it wasn't just something catchy you put on a T-shirt. It was something they actually believed and lived. And the next day in school, I'm walking down the hall here. "Hey, Steve." I'm looking around. Oh, there must be another Steve. I'm like, oh no, they're talking to me. And just to be acknowledged as a person, just started to change things in the right direction. And I was probably the worst football player in the history of the school at this point. And the coach calls me into the office after a couple of weeks, and I'm like, oh my God, they're going to cut me or something, and kick me to the curb. And the coach says, "Hey, great job."
Nope.
Um, Things are, you're going in the right direction. And just to get that love and that encouragement meant everything. And my mom also got me evaluated, and I was tested and found out, I got a whole slew of learning disabilities. And the school started to give me help. I got a resource room teacher, this lady, Mrs. Dudick, who was about 5 foot tall, 100 pounds, and she'd get up in my face if I didn't do my homework and scream at me. She had to stand on the chair, of course, grab my ear, and, all the theatrics. But, this woman taught me how to learn, and, forever changed my life. She could have just mailed it in or just said, "Oh, he's stupid." And like, she, was there for me, and she fought me, against my own, and got me to become a good student. And that's also what the book is about, is when you have a kid like me who's at the edge, who's looking into the abyss, how do you change that story? You know, and sports is a big way. Um, School teachers are another great resource to try to get people back on track and turn their lives around and give them hope for a better tomorrow.
Yeah. How did these experiences with with your coaches, your fellow players, Mrs. Dudek, your teachers, how did that influence your decision to become a teacher?
Oh, it's the big reason why I became a teacher. You know, it's a big reason why I've always tried to invest a lot of my time in my community and trying to make it a better place because I feel like I owe it to them as a way to kind of pay it forward, so to say. Um, you know, and you could just see how it impacted me. Um, you know, when I went from flunking out of school, worst football player on the team. By my going into my junior year, I was now team captain. I was getting B's and a few A's, you know. And my mom started saying, "Hey, let's think about getting you a college scholarship to go play football." And to go from 3 4 years to completely flip the script, was just amazing. And as we were getting into that home stretch, and starting to really think, okay, I can go and do something. I'm sitting in the class one day, and there's a knock on the door, and it's the principal. And the principal comes to the door, and he says, "Steve, I got to see you in my office." And I was very excited. I wasn't in trouble. I wasn't like, smoking in the boys' room. Today be vaping. When the principal came and got an athlete, it was because there was a college scout there. Right. So I'm like, oh, this is it. Is it going to be Notre Dame or Penn State? My mind's just racing.
Yeah, you're the next Rudy.
Yeah, I'm the big Rudy. And I get to the office and it's just him. There's no scout. And he says, "Steve, I'm sorry. There's no scout, but there was a terrible accident and your mom's dead."
Holy fuck. Sorry.
No, it's okay. That's the appropriate response. That's what I said. And, and again, you're back at the abyss. Okay. And that's the other thing with the book. What happens? You build yourself up and boom, you get hit again. How do you dig out? And what allowed me to dig out was my community. People in ways big and small, seen and unseen, all rallied, and just wouldn't let me quit at the end. We were right at the finish line, and they helped me get through my senior year. Things like just trays of baked ziti appearing on the front porch, because I didn't know how to cook, and things like getting a ride to wherever, helping me, teaching me how to drive. I didn't even have my driver's license yet, just stuff like that. My chemistry teacher, I'll never forget, so I missed some time for the funeral, came back in and she's like, "Okay, come after school." And she helped me make up all the work. And then she gave me $20 to take my sister to the movies. Didn't have to do that, but it saved my life. Just knowing that people cared. And, got me on the straight and narrow, got me through college, and, now and allowed me to become a professional, and serve in a capacity to try to give back. And it's that system that got me there. Conversely, my sister had an opposite experience. She had struggled with obesity herself, learning disabled, probably more so than me. Same problems. But when she tried out for soccer and basketball as a middle schooler, those teams had cuts. Football, you could be horrendous. They kept everybody. All you had to do was try. She got cut, and especially the basketball team, like 9 kids tried out and they kept 8, and she was the 9th one. And so without that sports family, she fell into drugs and alcohol. She never had those role models. She never had those speeches. She never had that brothers forever or sisters forever, right? core group of good, positive people pushing her forward. You know, it's not to say that all her friends were bad. Some of her friends were lovely people, but it was all about the party. It was all about, oh, we cut school. Oh, you got suspended. Oh, you smoked marijuana in the girls' room. Oh, you know, she got all that negative reinforcement and never got on a career track, never could get beyond the drugs and the alcohol. And by the time she was 35, she drank herself to death.
Oh my gosh.
She died from liver failure and kidney failure, you know, hooked up on every machine you can think of, trying to keep her alive. And when you think about it, you know, had she had the same experience as I did, you know, could her life have been different? You know, had that intervention that I had, that sports intervention, could she have been different? And what I've seen over the years, it's not just sports that can change lives. Like my own daughter hates sports. She loved theater. She loved music. She loved acting. And watching her in the play, I realize it's the same thing.
Yeah.
A bunch of people with diverse talents and abilities coming together to create something greater than themselves, you know, that they could never do by themselves. It's a community. It's a family. And, you know, that's her niche. You know, some schools now, they have robotics teams too, right? You know, it could be anything that you fit in. You're a family. You got a safe place to be where you can thrive, where you're welcome. You know, it's kind of like that old TV show Cheers, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows your name. You know, they're always glad you came. You know, without getting too corny here, but we want to find a place to exist. And I've also seen this as an adult. That's also what a lot of adult men are missing. You know, this was the subject your brother and I were talking about. When you're, 40-something, 50-something, you know, bald, fat guy, what do? Where's your crew? You know, we're working all day, the stress of family and this and that. You know, where do you fit in? And that's one of the reasons why folks in our demographic are high rate of suicide.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you don't have that home, you don't have that community. And that's one thing I've been trying to build, not just for kids, you know, but also for adults as well. You know, one guy we found that tried to help us out coaching with the youth league. We invited him to the first practice, and a great guy, had played in college. He looked, the smile on his face when he was out there coaching, you know, was just one of the nicest things I've ever seen in my life. You know, just the joy that this guy, you know, he's happy, he's having a good life. You know, don't get me wrong, it's not like, yeah, but just the joy when he got on the field and was now able to coach and be a part of a team again. You know, it just really, you know, things started to click up here. I'm like, you know, we need more community. We need to be together more.
Yeah, I mean, we used to have men's organizations, you know, which have kind of fallen by the wayside. I mean, look, yeah, the Flintstones had the water buffaloes, right? Yeah. You know, we grew up watching this stuff, but there were other, you know, Knights of Columbus used to be big. It's not in favor with younger guys anymore. But yeah, we do need to find our tribes in adulthood, specifically when, I mean, look, I spent, you know, the last 20 years raising triplets. They're out of the house for the most part now, right? So we're empty nesters. And for a while, I felt like I completely lost my identity because I wasn't driving all over creation to sports games or theater performances or practices. You know, I was a hockey dad, which takes a lot of freaking time. But yeah. So when that leaves your life, sometimes you're left with, hey, what's my identity now? Because you've forgotten your identity and you need to find it. And there are not as many opportunities as there used to be for, you know, community involvement. At least I haven't found them.
And, you know, and unfortunately, some of the things people stumble onto, you get on the internet and you go down a rabbit hole. And next thing you know, you're doing QAnon. Or, you know, and you become
you're wearing horns and face paint.
Yeah. And you know, well, how'd that happen? That guy made a couple bad clicks. He didn't have a community. He
Right.
wasn't. He was feeling, every school shooter, every mass shooter.
Yeah.
These are people who are in tremendous distress. And with the conspiracy theories, I had friends. They're telling me things. What in the world are you talking about? That's
Uh,
just
I have to
made
tell you,
up.
I was in Petaluma, California this past week for with this coaching organization called Pivot. And Wednesday night, I had time to myself. So I went out to dinner. I just sat at the bar at happy hour. I was still on New York time. So I was starving at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Um, so I'm sitting there at the bar and just eating like my little sandwich. And this guy just sits next to me, older guy, probably late 60s, early 70s. He just looks at me and he says, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but, and like immediately I knew I'm going to hear some conspiracy shit like coming out
Yeah,
of his mouth. And next thing I know, I'm learning things that I didn't know before, which is all of us who have had the COVID vaccines are going to die soon
sure.
because our blood is going to clot. Um, Abraham Lincoln and Jesus were killed for the same reason, because they were trying to overturn the monetary systems in their respective, lands.
Right,
Which
right. Of
I
course.
didn't know about that. Like I learned something that day, and it was like one thing after another, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, where do these people come from?
Yeah.
But it's real, man. These conspiracy guys are real.
It's there as a teacher of history, there are some conspiracies that did happen. There are some shady things the government did over time, especially with the CIA. But then you take that, and what people have done, it's become a cottage industry, right? Where they now build on some of that, and now you can say anything. You can completely say anything. So you'll take that kernel of truth, or okay, something bad did happen once, and now you have license to say whatever the hell you want.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're up in Connecticut here, and you see with Alex Jones and Pizzagate, and forget about that the Sandy Hook shooting didn't happen.
Yeah, that guy is, he should be put away just for saying that. Those of us who live in Connecticut, and I identify as someone who lives in Connecticut. I mean, it's crazy. The man's nuts, like I'm Alex Jones. Like so many people. I don't know. I just can't.
They
I
hang
can't
on his
stomach.
every
I can't
word,
stomach that. And then he's got his supporters. It's like, where has the middle ground gone in this country? I don't know.
right? And that becomes because people that became their community. Listening to him became a
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
instead of going and doing things in your own neighborhood, like so the Water Buffalo Club, or or civic group. Hey, how can we make this our community better?
Yeah.
What does our town need? What does the school need? What do the children need? We're listening to this crap, and the consequences are devastating, and it's just
Yeah.
gonna, unless we start doing something. This was my attempt to try to stem that tide and kind of remind people, hey, look how, if everybody sticks together, you can save a life like mine.
Yeah.
And also, um, in my case, it was an obvious need, right? These two kids, they lost their parents, so the community was able to rally because it was an obvious problem. Too often, we have people suffering in silence, and nobody knows. There might be a problem that could be just as devastating, that can lead to, oblivion, but maybe the community doesn't know about it. And that's another thing that we need to know, is to try to get people to destigmatize asking for help, and reaching out, and trying to find a way to connect, and get folks the help they need.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope your book is striking a nerve, or striking a chord, not striking a nerve. Maybe striking a nerve, hitting a nerve. And I mix my metaphors all the time with readers. What's next for you? Is there a follow-up book to this one, Steve?
Yeah, I'd like to write another one. I want to see. I got to see how a couple things turn out first. I want it to be focused on my children.
Yeah.
And I got to see how I'm going to start writing it probably soon and kind of see how they turn out. So we got to see. The last chapters haven't been written yet, but they're currently writing them now as we speak. But both my kids have overcome a lot of adversity. Especially my daughter wrote. Both of them were diagnosed with epilepsy at an early age. And we did no history of it in either side of the family, but me and my wife were recessive carriers, so they won the genetic lottery. And my daughter especially, like, she missed most of high school from side effects from the medicine. And just a whole bunch of trials and tribulations that she had to go through. But as a result of all that, she got into the Epilepsy Foundation, and she's been up in Hartford and down to Washington, D.C. to lobby Congress to get money for funding. And she's got to meet a whole bunch of amazing people and is doing great things with her life, overcoming this disease, this brain disorder. And again, she's kind of like in the same line as her grandmother, her Babcia Eva. You got this horrible thing happened, but we're going to overcome the adversity. We're not going to let it stand in the way of having a great life. And so we got to see where she winds up to get that final chapter or two.
Yeah, I mean, the lesson there is we are in control of the narrative. We can control the narrative of our lives. That sounds like one thing you've learned from your Babcia. One thing you've learned from yourself and the midnight talks with your mother and your experiences, playing football and getting the help you needed, learning wise, and what you're observing in your kids. It's a very inspiring story, Steve.
Thank you. I hope it can make a difference.
Yeah, I think you will. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, Steve, do you have a website or social media handles you want to share?
Yeah, you can reach me on social media. It's on Facebook and Twitter. I have a YouTube channel. I have a TikTok channel where you can see some of my motivational talks. So you can reach me through all that, or you could just email me at steve.boris@gmail.com.
There you go.
Be happy to chat and help in any way I can.
And we'll put all of that in our show notes so people don't have to write those down furiously in your car, especially if you're driving. I have to ask you about this, though, Steve, because I did come across a video on YouTube, a side-by-side shot of you and Christopher Walken. What was that all about?
You did your homework. Yeah, one guy where I work down in Eastchester, the video production teacher, this guy Mike Goldstein, he's a lot of fun. And they always have a student film festival, and he's had some really talented kids over the years, and they do a film festival. But just to show his kids that he still has the movie making chops, he gets me and a few other teachers, and we usually do a teacher video. And if you dig down the rabbit hole a little bit, you can see we've done about 20-something films. And he got inspired. He loves that music video with Christopher Walken, Weapon of Choice. And he said, well, we're going to make Borys of choice. I said, okay. And, I didn't know how to dance, at all. And we got this one girl we work with is a dance instructor. That's her passion. And we got her to teach me how to dance. And she goes, okay, we're going to do it on the 8 count. I go, what's an 8 count? Like, I truly knew nothing. And it was funny because as she's coaching me, I somehow felt like I was back in football camp again, and a lot of the training and the screaming and it was the same. And they got me to where I could be competent and not completely embarrass myself. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, fantastic. I'll be sure to find a link for that for our listeners as well. Steve, thank you so much for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
All right. It was my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.